He trusted them with his life. But one betrayal changed everything. Captain Ibrahim Traoré was poisoned by his own guard, and what happened next shocked an entire nation. Stay with us. You need to see how this story unfolds. What if the fate of an entire nation rested on a single cup of tea? This is the untold story of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a leader who faced death not on a battlefield, but in a quiet courtyard surrounded by those he trusted most. A story of a poisoned cup, a broken plan, and a choice that would ignite the spirit of an entire people. Stay with us as we journey through betrayal, resilience, and the silent revolution that turned a near tragedy into a legacy of hope. Because sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with the strength to refuse a single sip, which was supposed to be simple. Just a cup of tea, just a quiet afternoon meeting under the wide arms of an old mango tree. Nothing unusual, nothing memorable. But when death hides inside something so ordinary, even the air forgets how to breathe. They told me it would be easy. Walk softly, wear the plain uniform, serve tea to the senior officers like any other fresh-faced soldier, blend in, smile politely, keep your head down, nothing more. But that day I wasn't carrying tea. I was carrying death. The courtyard outside Ouagadougou was calm, the kind of calm that makes you uneasy if you listen too closely. The sun filtered through the green leaves above, dappling the ground with soft shadows. Senior officers lounged in a loose circle, chatting about logistics, laughing in low, comfortable tones. It looked like any other meeting on any other day. No tension, no visible danger. And yet danger was there, balanced precariously, on the tray I held in my trembling hands. The cups all looked the same. Simple ceramic, identical in shape and color. But one of them was different. One drop of VXT42 poison floated invisibly inside. Tasteless, odorless, fatal. That cup was meant for Captain Ibrahim Traoré, our leader, our lion. As I approached, Captain Traoré looked up. His smile was warm, real. Not the stiff, performative smile you offered to cameras or crowds. It was the kind of smile that made you believe for just a moment that you mattered. I froze inside. He thanked me with a nod, reaching for the cup. I held my breath, but then he paused. The captain didn't drink, not right away. His fingers brushed the handle lightly, then stopped. His gaze lingered on me for a second too long, sharp and unreadable, like a blade still in its sheath, but ready to strike. Did he know? I kept my head bowed, willing myself to vanish into the background, but inside I was already unraveling. The plan was breaking apart piece by piece, and I couldn't stop it. Across the circle, Colonel Konate shifted in his seat, pretending to sip his own tea. His eyes flicked urgently toward the captain. "Please, sir," Konate said, his voice just a little too casual. "The tea is fresh." But Traoré didn't lift the cup. He set it slowly, deliberately on the table beside him. And in that quiet, sunny courtyard, everything changed. The captain's voice cut through the warm air, calm, but cold enough to frost. The leaves above us. "They say the smallest things can be the most dangerous," he said, picking up a cup that was not his own, weighing it thoughtfully. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the officers, shallow and forced. But Traoré wasn't joking. He asked a question then, a simple one spoken almost lazily. "Colonel Konate," he said, "do you trust the man who pours your tea?" The colonel stiffened. I clenched my hands tighter behind my back, nails digging into my palms. Sweat slid down my spine. "Of course, sir," Konate replied, smiling tightly. The captain tilted his head, slightly studying him. Then almost lazily he gestured to his aide. "Drink from your own cup." The silence that followed was crushing. Konate panicked. "No, wait," he blurted. Too fast, too loud, and just like that, it was over. In less than a heartbeat, soldiers moved. 2 of them grabbed, me twisting my wrist behind, my back. Another ripped off my boot sock, revealing the tiny hidden vial. A sliver of glass with a red label. Unmistakable proof. The tray clattered to the ground, tea splashing over the dry dirt. I didn't struggle, there was no point. Captain Traoré stood calmly in the center of the chaos, tall and steady as a mountain. He didn't shout. He didn't raise a hand. He simply looked around at the men gathered before him. Men who had plotted betrayal behind friendly smiles. "I've led soldiers into real battles," he said quietly, voice low but carrying. "But this," he paused, letting the weight of his words settle into every heart. "This is a battle for the soul." In that moment, as dust danced in the golden afternoon, light in the teacups lay scattered at our feet. I understood something brutal and true. I was never the real weapon. I was just the test. And I had failed. They say loyalty is tested in fire, but sometimes it's tested in silence, in the unseen moments where no one is watching. But everything matters. And as I was dragged away, heart hammering against ribs that felt like they would break, I realized the worst part of it all. It wasn't the poison in the cup. It was the poison in our hearts. And Captain Ibrahim Traoré had seen it. He had seen it all. He had watched the storm build beneath the blue sky and refused to sip from the cup of betrayal. The courtyard, once filled with laughter, had turned into a silent battlefield. No shots fired, no swords drawn, just the crackling tension of exposed betrayal. Captain Traoré remained standing untouched by the chaos around him, a pillar of calm authority. His eyes, sharp and steady, swept across the faces of the officers, who now fidgeted under his gaze. He wasn't just looking for answers. He was weighing souls. "Colonel Konate," the captain said, his voice even almost gentle. "You suggested the tea. You insisted I drink first." Konate opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. His face had gone pale, as if all the blood had been drained from it. His hands trembled slightly, a tiny betraying tremor. "This is madness," he whispered hoarsely. But Traoré didn't need a confession. He didn't need an admission of guilt. He already knew. The truth hung heavy in the air, undeniable and suffocating. Without raising his voice, without making a scene, Captain Traoré signaled his men. In a fluid, wordless movement, they closed in around Konate. No shouting, no accusations, just the cold mechanical efficiency of justice being served. Konate didn't resist. He couldn't. The strength had left him. All that remained was the hollow shell of a man who had gambled his honor and lost. In the silence that followed, Captain Traoré turned his attention to the tray and the spilled tea at his feet. "They tried to poison me with something small," he said almost to himself. Something that would go unnoticed. He knelt, picking up one of the intact cups, holding it delicately between his fingers. He studied it for a long moment. "But betrayal," he continued, "no matter how small, leaves a stain." His words sank into us like stones in water. Some of the younger officers shifted uncomfortably as if trying to escape the weight of it. Traoré stood again, his presence filling the courtyard. "I do not fear enemies from outside," he said, voice gaining quiet strength. "I fear the ones who smile in front of me and sharpen knives behind my back." He paused, letting the words linger, branding themselves into our memories. Then, in a move no one expected, he turned to the captured soldier, the one who had carried the poison tray, and addressed him directly. "You were just a pawn," he said, "a tool." The soldier's head hung low in shame, but even tools leave fingerprints on history. The captain's eyes, full of sorrow and steel, scanned the rest of us once more. "Today we learned," he said, "that vigilance is not paranoia, that trust must be earned, not given." In the fading afternoon light, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood not just as a leader, but as a lesson, a silent, burning reminder that betrayal does not announce itself with a battle cry. Sometimes it arrives quietly, hidden in a teacup, whispered behind a smile. And it is in those silent moments that the true battle for a nation's soul is fought. The courtyard emptied slowly, the lingering stench of betrayal thick in the air. Captain Traoré stood silent for a long time after Konate was taken away. No grand speeches, no proclamations, just a silent acknowledgement that the danger had not passed. It had merely been unmasked. Later that night, under the dim lights of a private underground war room, the real hunt began. No generals, no press, no politics, just Captain Traoré, two counterintelligence officers, and a cyber specialist who had once helped crack the encrypted networks of a failed coup. They placed the black notebook found in the traitor's possession on the table. Its leather cover was scratched and worn, but its contents were lethal. Codes, payment trails, meetings, and most chilling of all, a single name repeated over and over. Lal the Jackal. "Have we heard this name before?" Traoré asked, voice low and careful. "Yes, sir," one of the aides responded. "Intercepted months ago on a foreign intel call. We thought it was a code name." Traoré's gaze hardened. "It's no longer just a code name, the E." Captain leaned forward, elbows resting heavily on the table. "Konate wasn't the architect," he said. "He was just another tool. The Jackal pulls, the strings." Silence settled among them, thick and oppressive. "Find the head," Traoré ordered. B cyber expert got to work immediately, tapping into surveillance grids, phone records, bank logs. Most of the trails had been scrubbed clean, almost professional, but not perfect. One message slipped through. A text from a burner phone used only once. "Pour latas for the cup. Tomorrow he will see nothing." The location less than 2 kilometers from the French consulate. "He's still in the city," the aide whispered. Traoré's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we're not chasing ghosts," he said. "We're chasing a man." The trace led to a high-end residential complex in Ouaga 2000, a fortress of luxury. No hallway cameras, no electronic fingerprints. Designed for the rich and untouchable. "Too clean," the cyber expert muttered. "He's protected." "He's hidden," Traoré corrected. "But not safe." The captain leaned closer over the war table, his voice almost a growl. "We don't knock," he said. "We smoke him out." A plan began to form, sharp and merciless. First, they isolated the building's digital signals. Then they simulated a minor fire alert. Nothing too big to attract public attention, but enough to cause a quiet evacuation. "Make him move," Traoré said. "Force his hand." Agents disguised as fire marshals and maintenance workers flooded the complex. Hidden cameras tracked every movement. An hour in, a man in a maintenance jumpsuit exited from a side door. Too calm, too practiced. He changed cars twice within 2 blocks, changed clothes once, kept his head down, but not down enough. One sharp-eyed agent spotted the smallest mistake. A limp, almost imperceptible from an old injury described in the Jackal's dossier. "That's him," the cyber expert confirmed, cross-referencing old surveillance footage. Traoré issued the final order, without hesitation. "Shadow him. No mistakes." The Jackal thought he had slipped the net. He moved through the back streets of Ouagadougou, blending in, disappearing into the cracks of the city. But Traoré had set a different kind of trap. Not one of brute force, but of patience. They watched him, waited, followed him into the heart of the labyrinth. And when he finally believed he was safe, and when he sat down in a dusty back room to arrange his next move, they struck. No grand firefight, no explosions, just 2 shadows stepping out of the dark and ending the game. When they pulled the black hood from his head, he smiled. Not out of confidence, out of respect. "It took you longer than I expected," he said. Traoré stood over him, arms crossed. "It took exactly as long as we needed," he replied. "For in this hunt, it wasn't about being the fastest. It was about being inevitable. And for the Jackal, there was no escape left. The interrogation room was cold, intentionally so. A single bulb swung slowly overhead, casting harsh, shifting shadows across the concrete walls. Across the table sat the man known only as Lal the Jackal. His wrists were cuffed, his expression unreadable. Captain Traoré entered quietly, closing, the door behind him with a soft click. No guards, no witnesses, just the lion and the Jackal alone in a cage of truth. Traoré didn't sit. He circled the table slowly, methodically, like a predator sizing up a wounded animal. His boots echoed slightly on the floor, each step a drumbeat of inevitability. "You know why you're here," Traoré said, voice low and calm. Lal chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "You're good, Captain. Better than most." Traoré stopped behind him, just out of reach, but not good enough to stop you. Lal tilted his head slightly. "Not forever." Traoré leaned down, speaking directly into his ear. "Forever is shorter than you think." He moved to the front of the table, finally sitting down, his hands folded neatly in front of him. "Tell me," Dare said, "who paid you? Who gave the order?" Lal smiled, a slow, infuriating smile. "If you have to ask," he said, "then you're not ready to hear the answer." Traoré studied him in silence for a long moment. Then he spoke. Not with anger, but with quiet certainty. "You weren't sent here to kill me," he said. "Not really. You were sent to send a message, to show that even the strongest could bleed." Lal's smile faded, "But you failed." Traoré continued, "And now it's my turn to send a message." He stood slowly, the chair scraping back with a soft groan. "Not with bullets," he said. "Not with fear, but with survival." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small ceramic cup, the same kind used in the poisoning attempt. He placed it gently on the table between them. Leadership is never without danger, but the deepest cuts often come not from enemies across the battlefield, but from those standing closest to you. For Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the man who had defied threats from beyond his borders, the real threat came from within. The shocking revelation that one of his own trusted guards had attempted to poison him sent shockwaves through Burkina Faso and the world beyond. It started with subtle symptoms: fatigue, weakness, a strange feeling that something was off. Traoré, known for his iron will, pushed through, thinking it was simply exhaustion. But behind the scenes, his security detail noticed small inconsistencies, alarming patterns that couldn't be ignored. A quiet investigation was launched, and the unthinkable was confirmed. A trusted guard, bought and manipulated, had been tasked with delivering a slow, undetectable death. The betrayal cut deep. This wasn't just an attack on a leader, it was an assault on the dream of a sovereign Africa rising under Traoré's fearless guidance. But true to his nature, Traoré didn't crumble. He didn't disappear from public view. He faced the situation with a calm that only true leaders possess. The traitor was exposed, arrested, and swiftly removed from all positions of trust. But Traoré's response wasn't only about justice, it was about sending a message. He addressed the nation, standing tall, his voice steady, and assured his people that no matter how many enemies lurked in the shadows, their vision for a free and proud Burkina Faso would not be derailed. Social media erupted. Messages of support, solidarity, and fierce loyalty poured in from every corner of Africa and beyond. The world saw not a man weakened by betrayal, but a leader made even stronger by survival. Traoré also announced a complete restructuring of his inner security, tightening every layer, ensuring loyalty is matched by action, not just words. But more importantly, he reminded everyone watching that true leadership is about resilience, not the absence of attacks, but the strength to rise after each one. In surviving this betrayal, Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't just save his life, he fortified his legacy. And once again, he showed that no poison, no enemy, no traitor can destroy the spirit of a leader who stands for truth, dignity, and his people's future.